My wife cheated with a younger colleague and mocked me in their texts. You're listening to Amelia's Stories, where I bring you real tales of love, betrayal, and hard lessons learned. Stay around because what I'm about to tell you will leave you thinking about the choices people make in relationships. My name is Daniel Miller. I'm 38 years old, a project manager who works long hours but always made time for my family. I've been married to Rebecca for 11 years. She's 35 and works in marketing. For a long time I thought we had a solid marriage, one built on trust and shared goals. We have a daughter together, Sophie, who's 9 and the light of my life. Things began to change when Rebecca got a new job at a fancy firm downtown. At first I was proud of her, happy she was moving forward in her career. But soon I noticed the late nights, the excuses about being exhausted, and how she came home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. It wasn't just that. She started guarding her phone like it held state secrets. She'd step into another room to take calls, her voice low, almost whispering. Family dinners turned into her grabbing something on the way home, and claiming she was too tired to sit with us. I told myself I was overthinking it, maybe being paranoid. But in the back of my mind, a small voice kept asking if something was very, very wrong. One night, as Rebecca was showering, Daniel sat on the couch scrolling through emails when her phone buzzed beside him. The screen lit up and the name Ethan Cole flashed across. Daniel knew the name from stories Rebecca told about her younger colleague at work. Something in his gut twisted, and before he could stop himself, his hand reached for the phone. The first message he saw nearly knocked the air out of his lungs. Does he still tuck in his polo shirt like a dad at a barbecue? Daniel's heart pounded as his eyes moved down the thread. Rebecca's reply came instantly, with laughing emojis trailing behind. You don't know the half of it. It wasn't just harmless jokes. The messages got worse. Ethan teased about Daniel's age, calling him predictable and boring. And Rebecca fueled the mockery with inside details about his habits, things only a wife would know. They sprinkled in flirty lines between the insults, like they shared a private world where Daniel was the punchline. The betrayal cut deeper than he imagined possible. It wasn't only the suspicion of cheating anymore. It was humiliation, ridicule, and disrespect. His wife, the woman he trusted for more than a decade, was laughing behind his back with another man. Daniel put the phone down quietly, his hands trembling. The hurt was overwhelming, but he swallowed it down. For now he wouldn't confront her. Instead he would stay silent and start thinking carefully about what to do next. Daniel began paying closer attention to Rebecca's excuses. She claimed she was going out for girls' nights, but the times never lined up. Midnight became her new normal, and sometimes she wouldn't even bother texting until hours later. Then came the supposed business trips. He checked her company's travel calendar online and noticed none of them matched. The inconsistencies piled up like bricks on his chest. Late one evening, while sorting through the mail, Daniel stumbled upon a credit card statement. Curiosity pushed him to scan it line by line. What he found made his stomach twist. Expensive dinners at restaurants he had never been to, hotel charges in neighborhoods Rebecca had no reason to visit. Each unexplained charge painted a clearer picture of what she was really doing. The most damning piece came a week later when Daniel checked the online account again. A receipt for a bottle of champagne and room service at a boutique hotel stood out. It wasn't just dinner. It was celebration, intimacy, something shared that had nothing to do with him. The final shred of doubt crumbled. Rebecca wasn't just exchanging flirty texts or enjoying attention from a younger man. She was in a full-blown physical affair. Daniel sat at his desk, gripping the edge until his knuckles turned white. Anger surged, but he forced himself to think clearly. Exploding now would only warn her. If he wanted to protect himself, and Sophie, he needed to stay patient, keep quiet, and gather more proof. Daniel forced himself to act like nothing was wrong. At breakfast he asked about Rebecca's schedule, smiled when she complained about work, and even kissed her cheek before leaving for the office. Inside, though, every word and gesture was calculated. He couldn't let her sense the storm building. Quietly, he reached out to Laura Simmons, an old friend from college who had since built a career as a family lawyer. Meeting her over coffee, Daniel laid out what he had seen. Laura listened carefully, then leaned in and gave him blunt advice. Don't explode. If you do, she'll cover her tracks. Gather proof. Protect yourself before you make any move. Taking her words seriously, Daniel bought a discreet audio recorder. He hid it near the spot where Rebecca often took her late-night calls. Days later his patience paid off. The device captured her voice, hushed but clear as she spoke to Ethan. "I'll sneak out Friday night," she whispered, her tone playful. "He'll never know." Hearing those words felt like a knife twisting deeper into Daniel's chest. But unlike the shock from the texts and receipts, this was undeniable. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was proof, spoken in her own voice, that she was lying, planning, and betraying. Daniel saved the recording carefully. His rage burned hot, but Laura's warning echoed in his mind. He couldn't waste this. Now he held evidence that would protect him and Sophie when the time came to confront Rebecca. Friday evening arrived and Rebecca slipped into a black dress, claiming she had a work dinner with clients. She kissed Daniel on the cheek like nothing was wrong and hurried out the door. Daniel waited 10 minutes before grabbing his keys and following at a distance. His chest tightened as he trailed her car across town, finally watching her pull into the parking lot of a boutique hotel. He sat in his truck, heart hammering, and saw Ethan step out from the lobby doors. The two greeted each other with a smile far too familiar for colleagues. They walked toward the hotel bar, laughing like teenagers sneaking around. Daniel straightened his shoulders, grabbed the folder of printed texts, receipts, and statements and headed inside. His steps were steady, deliberate. He spotted them at the bar, Rebecca's hand brushing Ethan's arm as she whispered something. "Funny running into you here," Daniel said, voice calm and even. Rebecca's face drained of color, her lips parting but no words coming. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, trying to mask his nerves with a smirk. Daniel laid the folder on the bar counter and opened it. "Receipts. Texts. Hotel charges. Everything you thought I didn't know." His voice never rose, but the weight of his words filled the room. Rebecca froze, staring at the evidence. Ethan muttered, "This isn't what it looks like," but the lies sounded pathetic. Daniel simply looked at them both, shook his head and walked away. His silence stung sharper than rage ever could. When Rebecca came home later that night, her face was pale and her voice shaky. She followed Daniel through the hallway, reaching for his arm. "Please, let me explain," she begged, her words tumbling over themselves. Daniel didn't even look at her. He set his keys on the counter and walked straight to the living room. "I don't need your excuses," he said flatly. His calmness unsettled her more than shouting ever could. Finally, her composure cracked. Her voice rose, sharp and defensive. "You were never exciting anymore. Do you know how dull it felt being stuck in this routine? I wanted to feel alive again." Daniel turned, meeting her eyes with steady resolve. "You didn't just cheat, Rebecca. You mocked me. You laughed with him like I was beneath you. That's what you destroyed, not just our marriage but the respect that held it together." His words cut deep, leaving Rebecca stunned. She tried again to close the space between them, but Daniel shook his head and walked upstairs. That night he moved into the guest room, shutting the door as a final barrier. In the days that followed he avoided her touch, her apologies, her desperate attempts to win back his attention. Quietly he began planning, meeting with Laura, gathering documents, considering custody of Sophie. Rebecca started to panic. The stability she had taken for granted, the house, the family, the reputation of being a devoted wife, was slipping out of her hands and she knew it. Daniel scheduled another meeting with Laura, this time determined to take action rather than just gather advice. Over steaming cups of coffee they mapped out every detail of the divorce strategy. Laura guided him through the paperwork, explaining how to secure the house deed and make sure bank accounts were protected. She emphasized the importance of showing stability for Sophie, and Daniel nodded. His daughter's well-being was the only thing that mattered more than his own pain. Within weeks he had quietly shifted assets, updated documents and prepared for custody hearings. Rebecca was left in the dark, still clinging to the belief that things could be patched up. But Daniel's coldness unnerved her. He no longer argued, no longer reacted. He simply moved with purpose, a man who had made up his mind. Meanwhile, Ethan's true nature surfaced. The thrill that once fueled their affair vanished under the weight of responsibility. When Rebecca pushed for more time together, commitment, reassurance, he started dodging calls and avoiding her at work. "This is too much drama," he finally muttered one afternoon, leaving her more shaken than she expected. As Ethan drifted away, Rebecca felt her world tilting. The husband she once mocked was slipping through her fingers, and the man she risked everything for was pulling back. Panic seeped into her daily life, but Daniel didn't soften. He channeled his fury into action, every step measured and deliberate. For the first time, Rebecca realized she was no longer in control. Daniel was. Rebecca tried harder to keep Ethan close, pressing him for evenings together, weekends away, anything that would prove their fling had substance. But the more she pushed, the more he recoiled. One night after she demanded to know where this is going, Ethan sighed and said bluntly, "You're too much drama. I didn't sign up for this." The words hit like a slap. Within weeks, Ethan requested a transfer to another department. His avoidance was clear. He wanted out of the tangled mess he had helped create. Rebecca was left standing alone in the same office where she once felt empowered, now shadowed by whispers. Rumors started quietly, but they spread fast. A few colleagues exchanged knowing looks when she walked past. Others whispered in break rooms about her late nights with Ethan. The respect she had worked years to build unraveled. She was no longer the admired marketing manager. She was the woman who blurred professional lines with someone half her age. While her reputation crumbled, Daniel's life took a different turn. He showed up to work every day composed, delivering projects on time, and never once letting his personal chaos bleed into meetings. His colleagues noticed his professionalism and admired his calm strength. Rebecca, on the other hand, came home each night to silence and walls closing in. Ethan was gone, Daniel was distant, and the circle of friends she once leaned on kept their distance. For the first time, she fully felt the weight of isolation her choices had created. The day of the divorce hearing arrived, and Daniel walked into the courthouse prepared. Laura had organized every piece of evidence: financial records, hotel receipts, and most importantly, the messages between Rebecca and Ethan. When the judge reviewed the file, the picture of betrayal was undeniable. Daniel's composure worked in his favor. He presented himself as stable, reliable, and focused on Sophie's best interests. Rebecca, however, looked rattled, fumbling through her explanations. The court saw clearly who had been prioritizing their child and who had been chasing something else. The judgment was decisive. Daniel secured majority custody of Sophie and retained the house. Rebecca would have visitation rights but was ordered to contribute support, a bitter twist she hadn't anticipated. For years she had leaned on the comfort of their shared stability, and now she was forced into a small apartment far from the life she once flaunted. The most crushing blow came during the reading of the text. The mocking words, about Daniel being boring, old, and predictable, were spoken aloud in the sterile courtroom. Rebecca lowered her head, cheeks burning, as strangers heard the ridicule she once shared so freely. Daniel didn't smile or celebrate. He sat quietly, hands folded, his face calm. Inside, though, he felt the weight of justice. She was finally exposed for everything she had done, not just the affair but the cruelty. The vindication wasn't loud or triumphant. It was steady, like a final door closing on their broken marriage. In the weeks after the divorce, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. The betrayal had carved deep scars, but he realized survival and dignity meant more than holding on to anger. Revenge had never been about destruction. It was about reclaiming his life and refusing to be broken. His focus shifted fully to Sophie. Mornings became their special time together, making pancakes, packing her school bag, and walking hand in hand down the sidewalk. She was his anchor, the reason he never lost control and the reason he kept moving forward. Each smile she gave him reminded Daniel that love, when pure, was worth protecting. Rebecca showed up at his doorstep one evening, eyes tired, voice soft. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she whispered, searching his face for any crack of forgiveness. Daniel stood in the doorway, steady and unshaken. "You threw us away for a joke," he replied calmly. "I don't need your sorry now." With that, he closed the door, the final barrier between past and present. The next morning, Daniel walked Sophie to school. The sun was warm on his face, her small hand wrapped securely in his. He felt lighter, not because the pain had vanished, but because he was no longer carrying the weight of betrayal. Behind them, Rebecca drifted further into the shadows of her own regrets, left to face the emptiness she had created. Daniel, on the other hand, stepped forward, free, steady, and finally at peace.